Today, together with you, we will look at the stories of people in World War II who are little known, yet they are very interesting, tragic, and historically unique. After all, we all know about the heroic deeds recorded in history textbooks in every country, but few know about these stories, and so we begin. Witold Pilecki, the volunteer for the abyss. Witold Pilecki was the literal definition of a Renaissance man born into the wrong era. A scion of the Polish noble Szlachta, he was a man who balanced the delicate grace of an artist with the iron discipline of a cavalry officer. Before 1939, Witold lived an idyllic life at the Sukaci estate. He was a gifted painter whose canvases captured the ethereal beauty of the Polish countryside, a poet who pondered the nature of soul and duty, and a visionary farmer who organized local agricultural cooperatives. He was a man of deep, abiding faith and a devoted father who taught his children that honor was not a word, but a way of breathing. He loved the thrill of a horse at full gallop and the quiet sanctity of a library. When the Nazi blitzkrieg shattered the Polish border in September 1939, Pilecki did not just fight a defensive war. He prepared for a long, spiritual crusade. After the fall of Warsaw, he helped found the secret Polish army, but he realized that a greater darkness was brewing in a small town called Odysseys. Rumors spoke of a camp, a place where the Polish elite were disappearing. Pilecki made a choice that defies human instinct. He decided to break into that camp. On September 19, 1940, Witold Pilecki deliberately walked into a German street roundup in Warsaw. Armed with a false identity card under the name Tomasz Surafowski, he allowed himself to be beaten, loaded into a cattle car, and delivered to the gates of Auschwitz. He became prisoner number 4859. His mission was twofold: gather intelligence and organize a resistance cell. For nearly 3 years, Pilecki lived in the epicenter of the Holocaust, while enduring typhus, starvation, and the constant threat of the gas chambers. He built the Związek Organizacji Wojskowych ZOW. This was an invisible army within the wire. They smuggled food to the dying, stole SS uniforms for future escapes, and, most incredibly, constructed a secret radio transmitter from stolen parts to broadcast reports to the Polish government in exile in London. His Witold's reports were the first to provide the world with a forensic, horrifying account of the industrial-scale murder of the Jewish people. He watched as the camp transformed from a prison for political rivals into a factory of death. In April 1943, realizing that no Allied liberation was coming, he executed a daring escape. During a night shift at the camp bakery, he and two comrades overpowered a guard, cut the phone lines, and bolted into the darkness under a hail of gunfire. He returned to Warsaw to fight in the 1944 uprising, a ghost of a man leading a company of insurgents against the SS. The tragedy of Pilecki is that the Nazi occupation was replaced by a Soviet one. In 1947, the man who had survived Auschwitz was arrested by the Polish Communist secret police. He was tortured so brutally that he told his wife the Nazi camp was child's play by comparison. He was executed in 1948. His grave remained hidden, and his name was officially erased from history for 40 years. He remains the only person known to have volunteered for a Nazi concentration camp, a man who chose hell so that the world could see the truth. Yong Kyung-jong, the triple conscript. Before the world collapsed into the madness of total war, Yong Kyung-jong was a ghost of the quiet morning. Born in 1920 in Shimpo, Korea, his life was dictated by the ancient rhythms of the Chosun dynasty's legacy and the harsh reality of Japanese colonial occupation. Yong was a man of the earth. He loved the scent of wet soil after a spring rain and the meticulous labor of tending to rice paddies. His hands were calloused not by the grip of a rifle, but by the handle of a plow. He was a quiet youth, known in his village for his endurance and a peculiar, stoic silence. He had no interest in the greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere or the emperor in Tokyo. He dreamed of a simple life, a wife, a small plot of land, and the freedom to speak his own language without fear. But in 1938, the machinery of the Japanese Empire grew hungry. Korea was no longer a colony. It was a warehouse of human resources. At the age of 18, Yong was seized by the military police. There was no farewell ceremony, no medals, just a cold bayonet prodding him toward a transport truck. He was thrust into the Kwantung Army, subjected to a brutal dehumanization process designed to turn a Korean farmer into a disposable Japanese imperial subject. He was taught to kill in a language he was forced to learn, serving a king who saw him as an inferior tool. In 1939, Yong found himself on the edge of the world, the border between Japanese-occupied Manchuria and the Soviet-backed Mongolian People's Republic. This was the Battle of Khalkhin Gol. Here, the young farmer experienced the true face of modern industrial slaughter. Amidst the roar of Soviet BT tanks and the screams of dying men in the high grass, Yong was captured by the Red Army. For most, this was a death sentence. He was sent to a labor camp in the frozen wastes of the Soviet interior. For 3 years, he survived on black bread and thin soup, his body withering but his will remaining strangely intact. Then came 1942. Nazi Germany was at the gates of Moscow. The Soviet Union, bleeding out, turned to its prisoners. Yong was handed a Mosin Nagant rifle and a rough wool coat with a red star. He was now a soldier of the USSR. He was shipped thousands of miles west to the Eastern Front, the most murderous theater in human history. In 1943, during the hellish urban combat of the Third Battle of Kharkiv, the cycle repeated. Captured by the Wehrmacht, Yong was seen not as a prisoner, but as a curiosity. The Germans, desperate for volunteers to man their Atlantic Wall, incorporated him into an hospitalen. He was transported across the entirety of occupied Europe to the Cotentin Peninsula in Normandy, France. He was now a soldier of the Third Reich. On June 6, 1944, the sky over Normandy turned black with allied silk. American paratroopers of the 101st Airborne Screaming Eagles overran his position. When they found Yong, they were baffled. He wore a German uniform, but his face was Asian, and he spoke a frantic slurry of Korean, Russian, and German. He had fought for the three most murderous regimes of the century, not out of conviction, but out of a primal, terrifying necessity to see the next sunrise. He ended the war in a British POW camp, finally finding peace in the United States, where he lived as a quiet immigrant in Illinois, never speaking of the 3 lives he lived until his death in 1992. Mad Jack Churchill, the Archer of World War II. John Malcolm Thorpe Fleming Churchill, known to history as Mad Jack, was a man who lived as if the last 500 years of technological progress were merely a suggestion. Born in 1906, Jack was a classic British eccentric of the highest order. He graduated from the Royal Military Academy Sandhurst and served in Burma, where he spent his free time in a motorcycle across the Indian subcontinent and learning to play the great Highland bagpipes. Jack was a man of visceral passions. He found the modern world's reliance on gunpowder to be somewhat uncivilized. In the late 1930s, he left the army to pursue a career in the arts, specifically the art of the longbow. He was so proficient that he represented Great Britain at the World Archery Championships in Oslo in 1939. He was also a semi-professional bagpiper, taking second place in the prestigious officers class at the Aldershot piping competition. Off the battlefield, he was a daredevil who worked as a movie extra, performing his own stunts and demonstrating his archery skills in films like The Thief of Baghdad. He believed that any officer who goes into action without his sword is improperly dressed. He was a man of the 14th century, trapped in the 20th, a warrior who valued the psychological impact of a battle cry and the cold gleam of a Scottish broadsword. When the Second World War erupted, Jack returned to the Manchester Regiment with a bagpipe case in one hand and a 6-foot longbow in the other. During the retreat to Dunkirk in May 1940, he performed one of the most surreal acts in modern military history. Positioned in a small village called Lepinetz, Jack spotted a German patrol. As the enemy sergeant drew closer, Jack drew back his heavy longbow and loosed a barbed arrow. The arrow struck the German officer in the chest, killing him instantly. It remains the only confirmed kill with a longbow in the entire Second World War. Later, during the same campaign, he was seen charging German positions on a bicycle, his bow strapped to the frame, and his broadsword held high. In 1941, Jack joined the Commandos, participating in the daring Operation Archery raid on Norway. As his landing craft approached the shore, he stood at the bow, playing the March of the Cameron Men on his bagpipes before leaping into the icy water with his sword. His most legendary feat occurred in 1943 at the Battle of Salerno. Jack and a single corporal managed to capture 40 German soldiers and a mortar crew by simply sneaking into their camp at night. Jack would press his claymore to a sentry's throat, whisper a terrifying threat, and use the prisoner as a shield to capture the next post. By the end of the night, he was leading a column of 40 confused Germans back to Allied lines. Even when he was captured in Yugoslavia in 1944, his spirit remained unbroken. He was sent to Sachsenhausen concentration camp, from which he promptly escaped, walking nearly 150 miles to find Allied forces. When the war ended, Jack was genuinely disappointed that the fighting had stopped, famously saying, "If it wasn't for those damn Yanks, we could have kept the war going another 10 years." He lived the rest of his life in quiet eccentricity, throwing his briefcase out of the train window every day on his way home because it landed in his own backyard, saving him the trouble of carrying it. The Legends of the Frontline. Complete script. Born in Moscow on August 18, 1921, Lydia Vladimirovna Litviak was never destined for a quiet, terrestrial life. To understand Lydia, one must understand her obsession with the vertical world. While other girls in the Soviet capital were encouraged to pursue domestic arts or factory labor, Lydia looked upward. At the age of 14, she walked into a local flying club and demanded to be taught how to fly. By 15, she had performed her first solo flight, a feat that marked her as a prodigy of the skies. She was not just a pilot, she was an aerial poet. Before the clouds of war gathered, she worked as a flight instructor, personally training over 40 pilots who would later defend the Soviet Union. Lydia was a woman of striking contrast. She was petite, possessed flowing blonde hair, and had a deep love for aesthetics. She loved the scent of lilac and the thrill of a high-altitude stall. But beneath this delicate exterior lay a heart forged in Siberian ice. Her father had been executed during the Great Purge of 1937 as an enemy of the people, a trauma that fueled her quiet, burning desire to prove her loyalty and worth to a motherland that had taken so much from her. When Germany launched Operation Barbarossa in 1941, Lydia was initially rejected from combat service. But she was not a woman who accepted no. She falsified her flight hours, adding 100 extra to her logbook to gain entry into the 586 Fighter Aviation Regiment, an all-female unit formed by the legendary Marina Raskova. However, Lydia's talent was too aggressive for simple defensive patrols. She was soon transferred to the 437th Fighter Regiment, a male-dominated frontline unit operating in the inferno of Stalingrad. On September 13, 1942, during her second combat mission, she achieved immortality. She downed a Yonkers Ru-88 bomber, and then, in a display of sheer technical brilliance, outmaneuvered a Messerschmitt Bf 109 flown by an elite German ace, Sergeant Erwin Mayer, a man with 11 aerial victories to his name. When Mayer was captured and brought before her, He laughed, refusing to believe that a 21-year-old girl with flowers in her cockpit had bested him until Lydia described every nuance of the dogfight with cold, mechanical precision. Lydia became a free hunter, a pilot granted the right to hunt enemy aircraft at her own discretion. She painted a white lily on the fuselage of her Yakon, which the Germans often mistook for a rose, leading to her nickname, the White Rose of Stalingrad. Her life in 1943 was a blur of cordite and grief. She saw her lover, fellow ace Alexei Solomatin, crash to his death before her eyes. She was wounded multiple times, once bailing out of a burning aircraft only to be rescued by a Soviet tank crew. On August 1, 1943, during the Battle of the Maas Front, the White Lily finally faded. She was intercepted by a pack of 8 German fighters while escorting a group of bombers. Despite the impossible odds, she engaged. Witnesses saw her yak disappear into a cloud, trailing smoke, with 2 Messerschmitts on her tail. Her body was not found until 1979, buried beneath the wing of her downed fighter. With 12 solo victories, she remains the highest-scoring female fighter pilot in history, a woman who proved that gender is irrelevant when the sky becomes a graveyard. Virginia Hall, the limping lady of the resistance. Born on April 6, 1906, into a wealthy, aristocratic family in Baltimore, Maryland, Virginia Hall was a woman who actively refused to fit into the gilded cage of high society. To truly understand Virginia, one must picture a brilliant, athletic woman who spoke 5 languages fluently and possessed a fierce, unyielding intellect. While her parents envisioned a life of country clubs, polo matches, and a marriage of financial convenience, Virginia chased the world. She studied at Radcliffe, Barnard, and the École Libre des Sciences Politiques in Paris, absorbing European culture like a sponge. Her ultimate dream was to become a diplomat for the United States Foreign Service, a field that was, at the time, an exclusively male bastion. In 1932, while working as a consular clerk in Izmir, Turkey, a catastrophic accident altered the trajectory of her life forever. During a snipe hunting expedition, Virginia accidentally shot herself in the left foot. The wound turned gangrenous, and doctors were forced to amputate her leg below the knee. For most women of her era, this would mean a life of sheltered invalidity. Virginia, however, simply fitted herself with a 7-pound wooden prosthetic leg, which she affectionately named Cuthbert. When she applied for the diplomat exam, the State Department officially rejected her due to an archaic rule banning amputees. Heartbroken but deeply defiant, she collapsed, completely unaware that the physical and bureaucratic pain she had endured was merely preparation for her role as the most hunted Allied spy in occupied France. When France fell to the Nazi blitzkrieg in 1940, Virginia traveled to London and volunteered for the newly formed Special Operations Executive SOE, Winston Churchill's secret ministry, tasked with setting Europe ablaze. In August 1941, she became the first female operative to be sent into Vichy France. Operating under the code name Marie, she posed as a reporter for the New York Post, using the guise of American neutrality to interview locals, gather economic intelligence, and establish vast networks of subversion. Virginia was a logistical genius. She organized the Heckler network in Lyon, coordinating safe houses, arranging parachute drops of heavy weaponry, and orchestrating the daring prison break of 12 SO agents from the Mauser internment camp by smuggling a key inside a tin of sardines. The Gestapo grew utterly obsessed with her. Klaus Barbie, the notorious butcher of Lyon, distributed thousands of panic-stricken flyers that read, "The woman who limps is one of the most dangerous Allied agents in France. We must find her and destroy her." Yet, she remained a ghost. By 1942, with the Germans occupying the southern zone, her network was compromised. To escape, Virginia performed a feat that defies medical logic. She hiked 30 miles across the frozen, jagged peaks of the Pyrenees Mountains into Spain, dragging her heavy wooden leg through hip-deep snow in the dead of winter. When she radioed London to report that Cuthbert was causing her great discomfort, an oblivious officer replied, "If Cuthbert is troublesome, have him arrested." In 1944, refusing to remain safe in England, she joined the American Office of Strategic Services, OSS, and was smuggled back into France aboard a British motor torpedo boat. Because her limp was too recognizable, she disguised herself as an elderly, frail French peasant woman. She dyed her hair grey, wore heavy layers of clothing to alter her silhouette, and deliberately shuffled her feet to hide the wooden leg's rhythmic thud. She successfully passed herself off as a goat herder, mapping out German artillery positions in the Haute-Loire region. Her intelligence led to the destruction of 4 bridges, the derailment of dozens of freight trains, and the capture of over 500 German soldiers before the arrival of Allied troops. For her extraordinary heroism, she was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross by General William Donovan, the only civilian woman to receive the honor during the entire war. Dmitry Ovcharenko, the axe-wielding soldier USSR. To understand the terrifying simplicity of Dmitry Romanovich Ovcharenko's feat, one must understand the harsh, practical realities of life in the rural Ukrainian village of Fyasovka. Born in 1919, Dmitry was the son of a traditional village carpenter and blacksmith. He was not a man educated in prestigious military academies, nor was he well versed in the intricate philosophies of global geopolitics. His education was tactile, the weight of an iron sledgehammer, the smell of charred and the precise angles required to split a massive oak log with a single swing. Dmitry was a massive, quiet youth with broad shoulders and a reputation for immense physical strength combined with a gentle, almost docile disposition. He was a creature of routine, loving the quiet of the morning forge and the satisfaction of a hard day's physical labor. When he was drafted into the Red Army in 1940, his superiors didn't see him as frontline shock infantry material. Instead, because of his reliable nature and comfortable familiarity with horses, he was assigned to the 176th Rifle Division as a supply driver. His daily reality was mundane, loading wooden carts with heavy wooden crates of ammunition, food rations, and medical supplies, and hauling them through the muddy, unpaved roads of the Eastern Front to the desperate soldiers on the firing line. It was an unglamorous, exhausting job, and by July 1941, as the Red Army reeled from the catastrophic onslaught of Operation Barbarossa, Dmitry's task became a deadly game of hide-and-seek with advancing German armored columns. On July 13, 1941, Dmitry was driving his horse-drawn cart near the small, war-torn town of Persian. He was entirely alone, carrying critical ammunition and vital company documents. Suddenly, the road was blocked. Out of the high grass emerged a heavily armed reconnaissance detachment of Nazi soldiers, 50 men in total, led by 2 arrogant Wehrmacht officers. Before Dmitry could reach for his rifle, the Germans surrounded the cart, ripped the weapon from his hands, and began to aggressively interrogate him. The officers were relaxed, laughing at what they perceived to be an easy, pathetic capture of a lone, uneducated Soviet private. They began inspecting the back of his cart, looking for military maps and intelligence. The Germans made a psychological error that would cost them their lives. They treated the peasant boy as a defeated animal. They completely ignored the fact that hidden beneath the loose hay on the floor of the cart lay a standard, heavy-headed wood-splitting axe, the tool of Dmitry's childhood trade. In a split second, the gentle supply driver transformed into a force of primal fury. With a movement so incredibly fast it caught the Germans completely off guard, Dmitry reached into the hay, gripped the long wooden handle, and swung the axe upward. In a single, horrific arc, the heavy iron blade struck the first German officer, instantly decapitating him in front of his men. The sudden, sheer brutality of the act completely paralyzed the remaining German soldiers for a crucial second. Dmitry didn't hesitate. Before they could raise their submachine guns, he dropped the axe, grabbed 3 heavy hand grenades from his supply crates, and hurled them directly into the center of the panicked group. The resulting explosions were devastating, tearing through the compact detachment, killing 21 soldiers on the spot and wounding dozens more. As the smoke cleared, the terrified survivors, believing they had been ambushed by an entire hidden platoon, turned and fled into the surrounding woods. But Dmitri was not done. He picked his axe back up and chased after the second German officer, who was sprinting through a nearby clearing. Dmitri outran him, tackled him to the ground, and executed him on the spot. He then calmly walked back to his cart, systematically stripped the dead officers of their maps, documents, and sidearms, and drove his horses forward, delivering his ammunition to his unit precisely on schedule. When his commander saw him covered in blood, carrying a sack of German intelligence, he refused to believe the story until military scouts verified the battlefield. On October 22, 1941, Dmitry Ovcharenko was officially awarded the title of Hero of the Soviet Union. He went on to fight as a frontline machine gunner, surviving the war until the final months of 1945, when he was tragically killed in action during the liberation of Hungary. Thank you if you watched this video to the end. I'm working exclusively for you, so I'd appreciate a like, as well as comments and a subscription. Thank you, have a nice day, and see you soon.